Welcome back, Paisans, to another magnificent episode of Calcio Culture, the premier Serie A podcast in all the land. We are finally on the other side of match week 10, and as every loyal Paisan knows, the Serie A season has officially begun. And with it being the official start of the season, as determined by us, the Calcio Culture lads, it is time for our first official State of the Union. And with that, the reigning champs sit pretty atop the table with Inter, Milan, and Roma all vying for UCL spots. We have young squads in Como, Cremonese, Sassuolo, all in the hunt for a top-of-the-half table finish. And the manager carousel has already begun with some surprise teams in Genoa and La Viola, Fiorentina teetering on the edge of relegation to Serie B. A lot to talk about today, a lot going on in the Union. Today, I am your host, Logs, joined by the one and only Vos to cover it all. Vos, how are we feeling?
I'm excited. It was kind of crazy. There was so much football last week between midweek Serie A and then weekend Serie A, and then we had Champions League starting today. We're recording on Tuesday, November 4th. So there's a lot going on, which is kind of why we said we'll take a step back and do a State of the Union rather than try to break everything down. And just to give everybody a preview, what we're thinking about a State of the Union as, we're going to look at all the teams and we're going to determine ahead of schedule, on schedule, or behind schedule. Kind of go through the whole table so we can talk about everybody, talk about some teams we maybe haven't talked about enough. So I'm pretty excited about this. And kind of a sidebar on State of the Union, a lot of refereeing decisions that are coming into question. And there's a lot of the sports betting stuff, trickery going on. And I'm not feeling great about a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing.
It really does make you think that there might be some kind of gambling
ring
union going on in the background that we don't know about, especially given our past subjects, most notably Sandro Tonali, friend of the pod, Beans, Fagioli, all always wrapped up in the gambling scandals. It makes you think that the refs are all tied up too, because it has been a poorly called season.
Yeah, just a lot of inconsistency, I think, is probably the more important thing. Because if it's shitty, but it's consistently shitty, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it, but it's better than like inconsistently weird decisions. And there's been a lot of that this year, which is not good.
A lot of consistency in the refs and a lot of inconsistency throughout the table, which is why we're covering that today. So again, Paisans, State of the Union, going team by team, where we think they stand. Vos and I will both say whether the team is ahead of schedule, right on schedule, or even behind schedule. We've got teams all over the table in every which way. And so with that, there's only one place to start. That's the top of the table. That's the reigning champs, still reigning supreme, still top of the table. Napoli, number one after 10 match weeks. Vos, where are they in their schedule?
Yeah, and this one, we both have the same thing, right? On schedule. I mean, it's hard to make an argument against that. I think people could say, okay, it hasn't been quite as good as last year. There are problems within the team. We've talked about that a lot over the last, I guess it's been 10 weeks, which is kind of insane. But they're top of the table. And if your goal is to win the Scudetto every year, and that's going to be your measuring stick, regardless of what may happen in the Champions League, you have to be on schedule. You are in first place. You are sole holders of first place. 22 points. Inter's behind you. Milan's behind you. Roma's behind you, all on 21 points. Like, that is your barometer. You are 100% on schedule there. And I think that is just plain and simple why you have to be on schedule. Like, there is no debate about it.
100%. They are who we thought they were, right? You, Mats, myself, all had them top of the table in our preseason predictions, and they've come out and done exactly what they've done last year with a couple of added niceties for them, just given the window that they had over the summer. And what we talked about on last episode, though, is that it really is the same names, the same players that are shining through, that are pulling through some of these results for them. Scott McTominay, MVP of last year, Zambo and Gisa continuously showing that he needs to be in this lineup, and they're right on track. Now, are they behind schedule per se in their pursuit of multiple trophies this year? Some would say, especially given their results in the Champions League, even today against Frankfurt, a 0-0 draw. But when we talk about solely the Serie A, they are for sure on schedule exactly where we thought they'd be.
Yeah, and I could even make the argument that, like, when we look at this team, you could say like particular areas are behind schedule. I mean, in the number one area, I would say, is the defense, and that does have to do with some of the injuries that they've had. But even going back to last year, I don't necessarily think they were 100% the best team across the pitch, right? The defense was exceptional last year, but they weren't necessarily the best midfield or the best offense. It's okay to not be the best at everything. What they do is they get results. And going back to last year, that's what won them the Scudetto. They won results. A lot of the time it wasn't pretty. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when Mats was on here about how they play dirty, they win dirty. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, you play to win. And if you win, then nothing else really matters at the end of the day. And they're showing that, because we could talk about these issues. Defense, all the noise off the field. They're talking about Noah Lang saying he needs to play. Antonio Conte getting into it with Noah Lang, getting into it with KDB. And then on top of that, now you have the injuries that they've dealt with, the recent ones and the older ones, Lukaku, KDB, Rachmani. And they're kind of just taking the punches as they come and aren't really skipping a beat there. So for me, again, on schedule, you're in first place despite all of this. Hard to knock it.
Hard to be upset with where Napoli is. Again, I think what you said is spot on. The injuries is something that I think we can discount from them. And when they do come back to full strength, it'll be interesting to see how they roll out and whether or not KDB does come back in this lineup. Now, his injury has continued to lengthen. I think we're at 3 to 4 months now. It was 1 month, 3 to 4 months now. Even his World Cup campaign has come into question. So interesting to see where that piece comes back in. But it will be hard to argue against what Napoli's done so far with what they've had.
Yeah.
To say that they shouldn't be here.
And with what's kind of like coming up for them, I think it's going to be interesting, because last year we saw Conte do a lot of interesting things throughout the season, change formation, like when he felt it necessary. But now we're kind of going into an area where KDB has pretty much played every game. He's not available. I still don't really have a premier number 9, although Højlund might be that guy. David Neres is now playing pretty well as like a forward. Noah Lang has come off the bench a couple times. So over the next couple weeks, I'm really interested in seeing how he manages that, because last year he did it exceptionally well, and that could happen again. But it is a lot of new faces being incorporated in different ways, even the old faces being incorporated in different ways. So it might not work. So Napoli over the next month or two, one to watch to see what does happen. Another thing that we've talked about recently, with these changes, you're now kind of forced into using McTominay and Anguissa more, which is really interesting and probably a positive. Those have probably been your 2 best players this season, regardless of like how they were originally used. So team to watch, again, on schedule right now, but it could go either way. Like it could really go bad or it could go really well over the next 2 months, I think.
Does that not play into Napoli's favor here?
Yeah, that's true.
Let's think about where we were at the end of the January window last season with Kvaratskhelia officially going to PSG. We weren't really sure where this offense was going to be coming from, considering he was the facilitator and the scorer at that time. Romelu Lukaku, especially for me, was coming under a ton of heat for not producing enough for the caliber of player that we've known him to be in the past. And from then on out, Napoli was unbelievable, and especially from McTominay and Zambo Anguissa. So the fact that we're saying that Conte is being forced to use those 2 guys in a way that was probably the best thing about their team in the second half of last year shouldn't be a concern for anybody. I think it's going to be, can the defense come back in line with the expectation that we had from last year, even with their bolstered roster that they made over the summer, and can they juggle their goal of getting multiple trophies, being involved in the Champions League, and vying for a very, very tight top of the table here in Serie A.
All good points. Love it. We can keep it rolling.
That brings us to Inter Milan, second in the table, highest goal differential in the league. Goals coming from every which way. Hakan Çalhanoğlu currently tied for first with goals in the league at 5. All 3 of their best strikers, Lautaro Martinez, Boni, and Marcus Thuram, all have 3 goals on the season. They can hit you in so many different ways. Where are they in their schedule?
They've got to be on schedule for me. I mean, coming into the season and at the end of last season, so the end of last season was, okay, they were exceptional, but second place across the board. Lose Inzaghi. Huge news. They then hire Christian Kibu. And I think coming into the season, for the most part, a lot of people said that was the wrong appointment and they're probably going to be set back. They are 1 point out of first place now. They have the most goals scored in the league, best goal differential in the league. Yes, the defense hasn't been great, but at the end of the day, you're 1 point off of first place in a year that if you were going to take a step back, nobody would have been surprised. And for them to go full throttle and to be the way they are playing right now is surprising to me. I think it surprised a lot of people, regardless of the players they did have. And the other things they did in the offseason was like what you just talked about, those summer signings that did improve the squad. I mean, particularly in Boni, and I would say keeping Esposito was a big part of that too. And then in Sucic now coming in the way he's been used has been very important. He's come up with some big goals. So they addressed a lot of things that were wrong last year, but I would say you can't be ahead of schedule because you need to be in first place. And then where I went back and forth on this one and where they could be behind schedule, the defense is still a problem for a club like Inter. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. So like you could make an argument, I understand, for being behind schedule on that. What I like about what Kivu has done is he finally used Bissek as a center back. I don't think it necessarily went great, but he's at least recognizing something that Inzaghi, or trying to fix something that Inzaghi never really tried to fix. And I think if they can get that piece right, they're going to be lethal, because right now the problem isn't scoring goals. The problem is conceding goals and like that weak defensive mentality, because realistically, the problems with this team are nothing tactical. Tactically, everything is working. It's just lazy defense, it's the same thing we always talk about. Lazy defending, like just somehow switching off. But at the same time, again, 1 point off of first place, and you're playing that beautiful attacking style of Calcio that everybody loved about them when they did win the league and when they probably should have won multiple league titles. So I'm going to put them on schedule. I think they're getting better, which is another part of the reason why I have them on schedule. But the sky's the limit for this team. I think the loss to Napoli was pretty disappointing. The loss to Milan, or who was the other team? The loss to Juventus was pretty disappointing. But I think every one of those games, they've kind of taken steps after them. And I still think they're the best, most talented team in the league, in my opinion, which could be a hot take for some people. But what about you, Lugs? On schedule, behind schedule, ahead? You're not going to be ahead. I know you're not ahead of schedule.
Inter is definitely not ahead of schedule. I was teetering on the fact of saying they were behind schedule based on the talent that this roster has on paper and what you just went through. I am now saying that they are on schedule, but barely, because of two main factors. Number one, the mentality that we've been talking about with this Inter squad for now 2 seasons has not improved. That's just a matter of the players that they've continued to have at the forefront of their lineup, and that to me, that's not going to change. Kivu is not going to be the manager that instills the right mentality for these guys. I think just given his youth, I also think that this is not Kivu's team yet. I still think that I've talked about this with Gasparini's ghost at Atalanta. I still think that Inzaghi's ghost is managing this squad game in and game out. Kivu is not taken over that tactical thought process just yet. With that being said, this front line is firing on all engines. They have an absolute monopoly on strikers in this league. They have 4 top-tier elite strikers here in Serie A when other teams do not even have one. So that's one thing going for them. I think the biggest point that I take from you is that the ceiling, there is no ceiling here.
Yeah.
They could easily run away with this league, just given the firepower that they have up front.
They could legitimately have like the 3 top goal scorers on the team. Like in the league.
Easily.
Like the 1, 2, and 3 spots could actually be Inter players for goals scored this year.
And they're on pace to be in the conversation for that come second part of the season. Now, unlike Napoli, I'm not too concerned with the number of games that this team has to play. A lot of their players have been there, done that, have been playing in 3 competitions for 4 or 5 seasons now. So game management is not necessarily a concern. But coming off the back of that Napoli loss that we talked about last week, in this challenge that they have with the mentality of getting ready for games like this, that is where I say that they're just barely on schedule. Because for me, aside from the reinforcements that they brought in over the summer, it's the guys that have been there that have not been able to take that next step from a mental standpoint. We've talked about it before. Barella, Bastoni, those are the guys that I'd like to see some sort of fire, some sort of change in the way that they approach each game before I say that they're ahead of schedule. Because even at second place here, you could argue from where we thought they'd be that they're ahead of schedule. And I think there are a lot of guys out there that could say that.
I think if you phrase this question differently and just said it like Christian Kivu, behind schedule, on schedule, ahead of schedule, I would definitely say ahead of schedule. Yeah, so I think
but I don't
really
think by any doing of his own, like I said.
Yeah, but where I would push back on you is the way that he has brought Barella further down the field has worked. Like, very simply, it's working really, really well. And it's also getting Hakan into a lot of goal-scoring positions, like outside of the penalties he's been taking. He's also, in the goals he has scored, he's had a lot of dangerous shots that haven't necessarily gone in. So I like what he's doing, but I also like the recognition that I inherited a system that kind of worked. Why am I going to change that when I can just like tinker with it a little bit, try to improve on it and go on? And like, you compare that to like a Juric, he's kind of like over tinkered, I would say. And like Kivu has just done it to just the right amount. and hasn't really made anything worse, but it seems like he's made a lot better.
I will say what he's been able to do in his flexibility up top, because what I think if I'm Kivu, right? And we talked about this with, I think, Summer before the season started and who you're going to put in goal. And you're like, why am I going to screw with something and put Joseph Martinez in there over Sommer, who's been here for so long? That's not where I'm coming in and making that decision. But to rotate the front line as much as he has between Lautaro and Thuram.
I think he's kind of benefited from Thuram's injuries, though. I will say.
Sure.
Although he knew Boney. He did know Boney from last year.
My point being is that he's been able to play Esposito, and Boney in certain games. In those games, they have shown through.
Yeah.
So he's been able to pick his places where he has rotated the squad from that on the front lines in a way that you're like, okay, maybe Kivu does have a little bit of something behind this momentum that Inter seems to be getting. In a week and a half out, for me, that Napoli loss is kind of a blip.
Yeah.
And in the moment, for me, that loss was pretty tough. But now a week and a half out, it doesn't seem like that's really too much of a bump in the road, especially given how the rest of the league has turned out around them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then one thing I just want to get an opinion out, because I don't know why we haven't really talked about it more. Frattesi, like, something needs to change. Like, this is a good soccer player. Like, he's very good. He's played for the national team. He's been good. He's just coming off the bench for like a couple minutes and it's like kind of just rotting away. And last year he was rotting away. So I don't know what needs to change. I don't know if he needs to go out on loan. I don't know if they just need to sell him, but he is very clearly was not a part of Inzaghi's plans and is clearly not a part of Christian Kivu's plans, right? Because there's been a lot of situations where I would have said, look, this is a Frattesi situation, and he still doesn't get the nod there. And it just, I just want this to change, and I just think it needs to be talked about because this is still a young Italian player that a lot of people have confidence in. I mean, he's 26 now. Like, you kind of got to go, and it might be down the table, but I mean, that's probably the best move for his career.
I mean, this is a selfish take from a Frattesi standpoint, but his inclusion on the Italian national team right now is in limbo just because of the fact that he has not played that many minutes. Now, we have a knock to Hank Mkhitaryan, which I'm not sure how long he's out or if he even is out for an extended period of time. We've seen that Sucic has been employed, I would think, sparingly compared to the performances that we've seen out of Sucic.
Agreed.
And I think that the Zalewski experiment is over.
Zielinski. Yeah, but he went back to Zielinski again. That's why it's like, he's like, if you have a midfield 3, Frattesi's midfielder 6, basically.
Right.
And I don't know.
That can't be true. It just can't be, that can't be, there's got to be something going on behind the scenes.
Maybe.
If there isn't an issue with depth for this Inter midfield come January, he has to go out on loan. Has to. It can be a 6-month dry loan, but there are certainly going to be suitors for him, and he needs that time on the pitch, consistent starting, to get back into the form that we saw him come from Sassuolo, that we've seen him put on for the Italian national team, in order to get back into form for next summer. At this point, if I'm Frattesi, I'm not particularly worried about my performances for Inter specifically. It's my performances for myself getting back to form for next summer. And so if Kivu doesn't have him in the formula here, which, to each their own, I don't know how you don't have him rotating consistently, but that remains to be seen. I do think that whether it's injury woes or just pure endurance here, they're going to have to rotate, and he has to be a play.
But they haven't. Like, going back to last year, they didn't. I think
the season just started.
Yeah, that's true. The season did just start. I think what's tough about the loan thing, it's like, where do you send him? Because Inter don't want to send him somewhere that, like, they're going to have to deal with him, really. You know what I mean? Like, you have to send him pretty far down the table, but he's too, like, dude, what does make sense to me, back to Sass. Kone, Matic, Frattesi, midfield 3, would love it.
No, I mean, you look at a team like Sass, you look at a team like Torino.
Maybe Torino,
I would even say Lazio, just given their injury woes.
That's true. I don't know if they're allowed to. I don't think
they
they're
may not be allowed to,
yeah.
And I don't think Inter, just given the fact that Lazio has been a perennial powerhouse, would they send him there? Probably not. But then another team that's dead last in the table, Fiorentina, could use him, even though that they're rather stacked in the midfield too.
Genoa, like, he becomes the new Fabio Moretti. Like, I don't know. It's just, there's nowhere for him to really go.
And I don't think that the answer is out of Serie A.
I would agree.
I think he has the capabilities to play in the Prem on a mid-table team, but I think that that's a mistake for him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. And I have no idea where the landing spot could be, but he just needs to get minutes. It's an absolute shame.
Yeah. I mean, a 6-month loan to SAS, I think would be a win-win for everybody, honestly. But I mean, we'll see.
I think they would welcome him back with open arms.
Oh, they definitely would. That'd be sick. But let's keep it moving. In at number 3 right now, tied for second, 21 points. Maybe a surprise to some, maybe not a surprise to others, is AC Milan, firmly in third place. And I'm going to let you kind of take the lead here, Lugs.
The Rossoneri, third place. Who would have thought it? Me. I would have thought it. I had him here in my preseason predictions. Did I have him here so early on in the season? Absolutely not. What we have seen under Allegri here has been nothing short of a spectacle, really. The biggest thing for me in this Milan team, and something that we haven't seen in some years, is that we have an identity. We've had an identity crisis for some odd seasons, even going back, I would say the season following the Scudetto, we've had an identity crisis, and we kind of are hanging our hats on that double pivot and Tonali being there. And that was really what we were going after. But then we have Reinders, but I wouldn't even hang our hat on Reinders. He was obviously a spectacular player who is getting demolished by the Manchester City faithful right now. Send him back. I'll take him back happily. Getting back to the real core of the story here, this identity that we have finally found under Allegri, this Corto Musso style of play, whether you like it, whether you hate it, it's getting the job done so far. We faltered first game against Cremonese, who's turned out to be a much better team than we originally thought.
Did you say where we are on the schedule, by the way?
I mean, if you haven't found out yet, we're ahead of schedule, from my opinion. I could be happier with this team. I could, but I'm definitely very, very excited for where we could go. I've continued to say it to you and Mats. I still think that we have some firepower that hasn't been unleashed yet from the front lines, but that's not where this team has shown through. We have started the same 3 center backs the entire season, aside from a Tomori injury here or there. We had been starting last season in the same spots. And to me, that's Allegri. Allegri has shown that he has been able to revamp this defense, give Mignon, who's had a shaky season, all the last 2 or 3 games has gone back to the old Magic Mike days. But this defense has done a complete 180. Pavlovic is loving what he's doing out there. He's having fun. Gabbia has firmly solidified himself as a leader, not only on the pitch, but certainly in the locker room. Homegrown player. I used to hate him. I absolutely love him. He's been able to hold it down in the back. And even Tomori, before his injury, has looked like a brand new player back to the Scudetto days. He's had a lot more support and been able to be the aggressive center back that he used to be, with a little bit more of a defensive backing behind him with Gabbia and Pavlovic. So without getting too much into this, it's a lot of what I've been saying this entire season, but this Milan team is turning out to be something special when you compare it to the last 2 seasons. I'm incredibly excited for what's to come. 1 game a week, Allegri at the helm. The guys are looking like they're having fun out there. We still have some players that have yet to get to their full potential in Santi Jimenez, who some have given up. I'm almost there, but he could turn it around. And Kunku's just barely getting into the lineup here. Pulisic had an incredible start to the season, coming off an injury. He'll probably be back against Parma this week, if not after the break against Inter for the derby. This team is in great shape going forward. If we drop a couple of points, I'm definitely going to be upset, but if at that point we'll just be on schedule and certainly not behind.
Right, yeah, I'm agreeing with you, ahead of schedule, definitely. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm not surprised by the way they're playing. What I'm more surprised about is the number of points that they've picked up, to be honest. I think in a lot of games the luck has been on their side, I think, a lot early on this season, which they're definitely benefiting from. And I'm kind of expecting that to start going the other way at some point. I mean, we saw that in the Pisa game. That was a wild game where it was a 2-2 draw at the San Siro. But they're very much an Allegri team, and they're executing Allegri's plan actually perfectly. And we still haven't seen Leao and Pulisic playing together, and there's still a chance that does work really well. And if it does, there's no reason that this team can't keep up this kind of pace. But what I will say, in the game that I saw, I think it was I forget, it was match week 9. I think it was match week 9, may have been 10.
Match week 9 was Pisa. Past week was Roma.
Okay. Where Nkunku, against Roma. Nkunku was playing. I thought he was really bad. Honestly, I thought he couldn't get on the ball. He couldn't find the game. And it kind of goes back to, okay, that job is a very hard job to do in the Allegri system. If you're not like the off-ball, goal-scoring kind of winger forward, you kind of have to float in and out of the game, move guys. And I thought Santi Jimenez was more effective than Nkunku. Granted, That was Nkunku's first full start in the system, right? So I think that's a big problem that they're still going to be on the lookout for. But on a positive note, Jashari is coming back right at the time where people are all super fed up with Yusuf Fofana, who can't score, can't assist, although getting into good positions. So this team has a lot of players that are also coming back. But again, we do have to say they're ahead of schedule right now, because I think goal this year is top 4, and they were arguably you're still an argument that they're the best team in the league right now. And I don't think anybody expected that, nor were they trying to be that. But I think the goal is still be top 4, and they're on pace to do that. And they're really competing for a Scudetto. And I think that everybody that follows Calcio is saying they can probably go and win it this year if this continues. And the question is more, will it continue than anything else?
100%. I think, to bring myself back down to earth, I don't want to diminish how badly we played at times. I think the first 30 minutes of that second half against Pisa were horrendous. Coming out of halftime, I thought our first 30 minutes against Roma this past weekend was some of the worst football I've ever watched in my entire life. Roma should have scored 5 goals in that span. But like you said, luck is on our side. In this league, you need luck in order to get points from time to time. We seem to be fully bought in to Corto Muso, which is a tough system. It's not for everybody, but if you're fully bought in, then it works. But I do think that the front line, which is always going to be a tough conversation to have with this team, has more in it.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was the adjustments that were made against Roma are why I say that, because the problem was, not to get too into, we have a big episode here, but not to get too much into it. You can't play Leao and Nkunku as back to goal players. That's not their forte. You finally pushed Fofana forward, that useless sack of shit, and took a little bit of the defensive pressure off of those two guys to come back and get the ball facing goal. They both were much more comfortable in that spot. So there will be some tinkering up front. I'm just happy to say that the back line, as much as Bartasagi sucked in the first half, he's been good on the left side. And the ability to stay concentrated through a full game is where I'm more content than anything else.
Yeah, listen, I mean, the way that Allegri plays, they're going to be in every game. And the reason I think that the reason that this could go top 4 is because the way that Allegri plays, yes, you're going to be in every game, but then he has those guys that can just randomly go and get it, like Rafael Leao and like Christian Pulisic so far this year. And then you have Luka Modric to kind of help facilitate those things. But in any given minute, they can score out of nowhere. And that's really dangerous. And I think that going back to the last couple seasons, all the bad stuff, the Allegri system kind of covers up a lot of the bad that was there, because you have the center backs have so much cover from the guys in front of them. Mike Maignan is not playing well, so they're playing with confidence, but they're also not asked to do all that much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of just working this was just a good appointment as a manager, right? You did a couple experiments, didn't go well. Let's get back to basics. We know exactly what we're going to get from Allegri, and this is, once again, we're seeing it here. I had them in 5th or 6th, I think, but there's no reason to say they can't get to Champions League football this year.
I mean, in summary, the two biggest things here. Number one, we finally have an identity that's ahead of schedule. I didn't think we were going to have that yet. And number 2, initial goal of the season was top 4. That is still the goal. But now the Scudetto is in reach.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different way to look at the season. So certainly ahead of schedule from the Rossoneri. Very happy with where we stand today.
Perfect. Moving on, in 4th, not even in 4th place. Technically in 4th place. Also tied for 2nd is AS Roma, 21 points. I have them on schedule for me. I think that the expectation is top 4 for this team. I wouldn't even say goal. I say for Milan, the goal is top 4. For Roma, the expectation is top 4. And if you don't get that, I think heads will probably roll as a result of that. So I'm saying they're on schedule. Again, they haven't been playing perfect football, but they have the best defense in the league still. Not quite getting the goal contributions they've needed. But over the last couple of weeks, I think the Sule-Dybala partnership has been excellent, although Dybala did get hurt this past weekend, and I think he's going to be out for a month or so. And then on top of that, he's now using, I would not have had this on my bingo card, Brian Cristante as the number 10, actually playing very well there. So Gasparini's tinkering, getting things better and better, and that I have them on schedule because they're a top 4 roster in the league for me. And going back to last year, I thought that they were that as well. And now they're in a place where they're playing good football. They're winning games. They're in every game, regardless of if they put up a goal or not. They're only conceding 1 goal a game for the most part. And I think things are going well. And then on top of that, I think the tinkering that Gasparini's doing is starting to work. And we're seeing it more and more. And against Milan, yes, they didn't win the game, but they definitely could have won that game and at the very least drawn it. And that is saying a lot for what we're in, how we're talking about Milan. So he's tinkering with the back line, getting things better. Tinkering with the midfield pairing, getting that better. Leaning on his outside backs, whoever's healthy and whoever's playing well. Wesley on the left or the right. Zelke Celik has been exceptional this year, I think. And then he's finally getting that front three right. And I'm loving what I'm seeing from Roma. Everything hasn't come together yet, but they're still tied for second place. And if you're not playing your best football and in this position, you're in a great spot to go and strike for that Scudetto. And I think they're going to be in this race for the entire season, partially for the same reason Milan are. The way that they play, they are in every game. You're not going to score a lot of goals against them. And they do have those players like Milan who can go and get you a game, like Paulo Dybala, like Matheus Sule. I think they're going to need to get more from other guys on the team. But again, I think Gasperini is somebody that's going to figure this out over the season, and we're seeing it.
You guys have been hot on Roma. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick to this. I still think they're behind schedule. I haven't been hot on Roma the entire first 10 games of this season. I still think that this back line is fraudulent. I think that they're being completely propped up by the skill and the talent of Svilar, which I don't think is...
He has been exceptional.
He's been exceptional.
Yeah, I think he's been better than he was last year, and he was goalie of the year last year.
Exactly. He was the second best goalie last year. He's definitely the best goalie this year. And I do think that this back line is certainly being propped up by him. I mean, Milan had over 3 XG this past weekend. We scored 1, partially because Fofana's an absolute idiot. But I do agree that Roma should have at least drew this game, could have won in the first half alone. But when I look at the results that they've had, they're not convincing at all to me. I would have liked to have had Gasperini through 10 games know his lineup. I don't think that the injuries have been exceptionally, when you compare it to other teams in this league, injuries have not been that big of a factor for this Roma squad. And sure, a tinker here and there, is definitely needed throughout the season from even a top team. But to be at this point in the season and leaning on Brian Cristante as your best 10 does not give me any sort of comfort as a Roma fan. Don't get me wrong. I thought he was great against Fiorentina. I thought he was all over the pitch against Milan this past weekend, but that's not who you should be leaning on. The fact that this front line has basically given up on the idea of Dobic and Evan Ferguson having any part in this for the rest of the season, aside from a sub here or there, is worrisome. Dybala with his injury woes, he's out for a month here. Who knows what their new lineup's going to be. Greeny has shown up a little bit more than we saw last season, but that's nothing crazy. And so now you're leaning on Sule as your most consistent front lineman. It's not screaming where I thought Roma would be at this point in the season. I can't argue with being second or tied for second. Obviously, that's, it's no small feat, no matter what stretch of the league you're going into, but there are definitely cracks in this team that need to be ironed out sooner rather than later, or I do think that this could unravel. You look at their schedule coming up.
See, but you're making the argument that they're behind schedule because of what could happen, I think, which is true. I think that these are legitimate arguments, but I think it's hard to say so far that they've been behind schedule.
I think that this will be a consistent theme for me as we go down this table, but I'm trying not to base the schedule, where they are on their schedule, just on where they lie in the table. It's certainly part of it, but I also think part of it has to be what the vibe check is, right? You gotta feel for the team. And so right now it's been a rocky road, even given the fact that they've only let up 5 goals. Again, I still think Svilar has been a majority of the reasoning for that. But going forward, I do think that they're not ready to take on the schedule ahead. So let me put that into present terms. I don't think that this team is ready now for what's to come. Now, what's to come? Udinese has been a tough team this year, mid-table, but still a tough team. They've gotten results. We'll see how that goes. They go right into Cremonese, who we've said already and we'll touch on again, has been a much better team than we had thought previously. They then go Napoli, Cagliari on the road, I believe. Everyone knows it's tough to go to the island. Como, Juventus to round out the year. Telling times coming into the end of 2025 here. I could be completely wrong. I feel pretty confident in the fact that this Roma team is ahead of schedule in terms of their table placement, behind schedule in terms of their play.
All right, cool. You keep it moving then. On to 5th place, Bologna. I think we're in agreement on this one, right?
This Bologna team, right on schedule. Yeah. Right on schedule. And I have typically been a Bologna hater. I think that Bologna and Milan had a little bit of a stronger rivalry than usual last year coming into the end of the season. But going into this season, what they lost over the summer, what they've been able to retain and build upon, they're right where they need to be. 5th place. They're still playing in Europa. One of my biggest things here is that you replace one of these wins, one of these draws, Lecce or Fiorentina for that matter, with a win, and they're right on pace with Roma, Inter, Milan, right? So
3 points
being
off,
right,
yeah.
being right on the cusp of those teams right now for this Bologna squad, given what they lost last year in Ndoye and Bukama, you can't ask for much more. Santi Castro, your boy Vos, has been
Getting
lights
hot.
out, very hot. 2-goal to a brace over this past weekend. Luka Me seems to be holding down the defense even without his running mate. One piece of concern is where's Lewis Ferguson? Typically, they're one of their best players, their most consistent players. I don't think has played up to his past potential. Could just be getting back into it. Has had some injury woes. But 5th place for this Bologna team is right on schedule.
Yeah, I would agree. Kind of like I'm going to say this about another team in like a second, but what's kind of weird about Bologna is they're kind of in this new era of Bologna, right? Like the Scagliomatta era broke them into the Champions League. Then it was last year with Italiano, still this year with Italiano. In a way, they're kind of benchmarked to themselves, right? So like you have to basically be as good as you were last year is what your goal is. And I think ultimate goal is to be anywhere in a European spot. I think top 5 would be ideal.
That's an interesting point, Vos. I do not think that there's another team in this league.
I have
that's
one
at
other
the
team.
Same...
I have one other team.
You'll get to it, but and you'll surprise me, but maybe there's one other team, but very few other squads are in the same timeline that Bologna is right now.
For sure. And what I like about what's gone on this year, going back to last year, they started the season. This year, they have had a better start than they did last year in terms of winning more games, which I love. And I think a problem with Italiano ball usually is that they take a long time to get going. And I've liked that Italiano's kind of changed this game to be a little bit more aggressive. And we saw a lot of boring Italiano ball. And at the beginning of the very first couple games, we saw a lot of that. But now they're getting a little bit more aggressive. He's getting the new players playing really well, particularly in Cambiaghi has been lights out, replacing Ndoye, which has been huge. He's also just not getting away from what has been working and getting Riccardo Orsolini to just do whatever he wants. And then Santi Castro, whether or not he's on the score sheet, is doing a lot. I kind of think there's the 2 Santis in this league. There's Santi Castro and Santi Jimenez. I think they do a lot of similar things, actually. But I think Santi Castro is a better player, and we're kind of starting to see he's going to be a goal scorer this year. 4 goals, 1 assist for him. And I think he's also just getting some more stuff out of Remu Freuler and kind of making up for that Lewis Ferguson kind of step back, I'll call it. He's been injured a lot, Lewis Ferguson, so I don't know if it's going to take time, but that's been a very big one. And then the other guy, oh God, I just totally forgot his name. I had him in my notes. Stay with me.
Well, while you're looking him up, I do want to touch on Santi Castro, how he does do similar things to Santi Jimenez. It's a confidence thing, man. I talk about it all the
Santi
time.
Castro is very confident.
I talk about it all the time.
I remember what it was. Fabian is like the number 10. I think he's been very, very good. Not on the scoring sheet just yet, but that 3 of Cambiaghi, Fabian, Orsolini under Santi Castro is a winning recipe, and I really, really like how this team's playing. And I think they're going to continue to get better. And I don't feel good about anybody playing them. Like, I'm not going to bet against Bologna at any point, to be honest with you.
Well, you never have in the past, so that's nothing new. But no, this Bologna team is strong. It's consistent. It's very consistent. When they do lose, it's by a goal. When they win, it's convincing.
Yeah.
And so
there's a plan.
This is a squad that has top 4 hopes.
Yeah.
Expectation is to get back into European football for real, not just by winning the Coppa Italia. And the worst thing that they could do is overextend themselves into thinking that they should be vying for more.
Oh, they should vie for more. I love it. Go for it.
These
guys won the Coppa Italia last year. I don't want to hear any bullshit. Bologna is very good. I have them finishing 5th. I think they're in pole position to do so.
And I think that they should be finishing in 5th. I think I had them in 5th or 6th. And I worry that if they try to do much more, that they're going to lose sight of the track that they're on. They're on a great track to be a perennial powerhouse in this league. And I don't want that to be overlooked as just part of the process. Trust the process, Bologna. Trust the process.
Fair. Going to somewhere that does not have a process.
No process.
6th place, tied with Bologna on 18 points. So only 3 points off of that 2nd place group, which is crazy to say when you're thinking about the state of this club. Bianconeri, Juventus. I'm assuming we both have them behind schedule, right?
Very much behind schedule. Very much behind.
Although
again, it's
only
not
3 points off. Like, this is not. Again, you're right. You're right. It's not a table thing.
This is not a table thing. This is a complete vibe check. And for anybody to say that being on schedule with Tudor out after 10 games was not the schedule that Juve was looking for.
I think I would agree with that. I think that's fair. On this one, we've kind of beaten Juve to death over the last couple of weeks. Like with this, it's you're 3 points off a second, but it has been like things aren't right. And regardless of results, it has not been right. And I think the other thing working against them is they spent a shitload of money. They bought some of the best players that were in Serie A. They brought some of the best players from France. They've kind of gone to Germany. They've gone everywhere and just bought really good players, and it's not really working. And then since last we spoke, yes, Tudor got sacked. The official hiring is Spalletti. Since he took over, 1 win, 1 draw, and then they did have 1 win with the interim manager. So 2-1 would that be, or 2-1-0? I never know.
2-1-0?
Yeah, 2-1-0. So things have gone in the right direction. I kind of want to talk about Spalletti more than anything else with this team because we know why they're behind schedule. I had them top 4. I think a lot of people expected them to be competing top 4. Juventus is a massive football club. The football has been bad. It's been inconsistent, and it's been lacking real mentality, really, and real that you expect from a club of this nature, right?
Just no direction.
If you're Juve, you're expected to be hanging with the big boys, like the Real Madrids, the Bayern Munichs, like you go all over the place, the Man Cities, whoever it may be. They're not close to that. And that's part of the reason why they're always going to be behind schedule until they get back there.
Well, and Tudor even said that during his time about Cambiaso. We talked about that on the pod a couple weeks ago. He was saying how Cambiaso has the talent to play for the big boys and inferring that Juve's not there. And he was right. Juve is not there. This is not the Juve of the 2010s of the dynasty years. And Mats, again, like you said, Mats beat a dead horse with this last week, and rightfully so, that you can't just buy talent. You got to have a vision for it, and they didn't have that. Speaking of vision, got to talk about Spalletti's vision here. I didn't see the game today. I'll be completely honest, against Sporting, but when I did check in his first game against Cremonese, Coop Miners at left center back was something I was not predicting at all. So where do you think Spalletti's going to take this squad?
I actually didn't get a chance to watch these games yet, but I have a lot of confidence in Spalletti. I think it's more now a question of, are these the right players to get Juve top 4? It's kind of shifted in my head. And I'm not sure. If they are the right players, I have a lot of confidence in Spalletti to get them to that level. But again, I'm not 100% sure. I think the goal scoring piece of this is still going to be pretty tough, because I don't know who it is. There's a chance that it's Dusan Vlahovic. It looks like Dusan Vlahovic has been the best goal scorer. I mean, this is outside of Yildiz, and I don't even necessarily think, I don't think for them to be the best version of themselves, Yildiz will be the number 1 scorer, because I don't think that's the best part of his game particularly. So that's what I'm looking at. And Spalletti got that right with the Kvaratskhelia, Osimhen, Wombo combo, we'll call it. I don't know what the Juve Wombo combo is going to be. I don't know if there is a Wombo combo yet. And that is a piece to watch, because the defense has always been like, okay. And going back to Thiago Motta, it was okay. It wasn't anything to write home about. And I think Spalletti will get that right. But I don't know about the offense and Coop Miners. I don't know. It's worked at left center back, but who knows? What about you?
I just think, unfortunately, he's got it. He's 10 games behind the rest of the league in terms of figuring out what's going to work. If you had Spalletti from match week 1, I feel better about it, but he's got to get this team back up and running very quickly. Again, it's always tough for a manager, especially a manager who's been around the league for a very long time, to come in and inherit a squad that's not his. So there's going to be growing pains. The one thing here that has to be said is that the vision, or the goal here of top 4 cannot be missed. It's incredibly important to be top 4 for this Juve team going into next season. And if they don't make it there, I think that there's this problem, and we talked about it last week, is going to roll into seasons hereafter, not just next, but seasons to come.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And with Juve, there's just like not a ton to say right now, because we don't know where they're going to go with Spalletti. And it's kind of like Napoli. Like, a lot's going on right now. We're going to see where it takes us. Like, they could absolutely bounce from here and be top of the table, or it could go the other way. Like, it could be more of the same.
They have a brand new schedule. They have a brand new schedule. They need to figure it out.
It could be exactly the same. So we're going to see on them, but keeping it rolling. Also, 1 point behind them, firmly in 7th place, Como. Pretty good.
Como, baby.
What do you got on
lads
that,
by the lake? For me, they're ahead of schedule. I'm a huge Como guy. Huge Como guy will always be. This team is electrifying. It's exciting. But I say ahead of schedule because they are now in a place where week in, week out, I'm looking at them as they have a chance at 3 points, and it doesn't matter who they play. It does not matter who this Como team plays, whether they're at home or away, they have a chance at 3 points.
Yeah.
They are 100% the favorite team on any team, bottom half of the table right now. Nico Paz is a solidified, certified superstar. With all that being said, again, I had them, I think in ninth. I thought that there was a little bit more talent across the board here that could push them that a little bit further down the table, but certainly we're vying for a European spot. And this team has come to show that even without some of their top talents, Hassan Diao just coming back now, they are nothing to be taken lightly. So for me, ahead of schedule.
I have them on schedule, and this is the other team that I was talking about where they're kind of benchmarked to themselves. So for me, they finished in 10th last year, so I think they're right in the range where they're kind of expected to finish. I think like a three place jump is kind of what the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have them on schedule. The other thing that I think does have to work into that, regardless of who they signed, they spent a lot of money. And with a lot of money, you are expected to jump some places. So I think that also gets into it. So that's kind of like the two things that I'm weighing here. I do think that they need to figure out where they're going to go to get more goals, because Nico Paz can't be your solution for everything. And I think that Asante Diao shout is really important, and we'll see what he does when he comes back. But Nico Paz needs help, and they need more of like a serial goal scorer to pop up from somewhere, because Nico Paz is just required to do so much. But yeah, they've been great. I have nothing bad to say about Como. And they're right up there with Bologna. Like, they're a couple of good players away from being Bologna. Like, only a few. You probably need like 3 really good starters to be a Bologna, and then all of a sudden you're in the Champions League competition, or vying for Champions League. So that's the way that I'm seeing them on schedule, just doing better than last year. That's what it's all about for them. I don't think you need to get European football this year. I think that's the aspiration, but that like 7th place is kind of like right where I would think that's we need to be there.
I think that Como rightfully should be vying for a European spot more so than Milan should be vying for Scudetto. That's how confident I am in Como.
Wow.
Going for 5, 6, 7 here.
All right.
And I think to your point, they're 1 or 2 players away from being that team, which for a newly promoted team last year, regardless of the amount of money they spent, I think it definitely had a schedule. And let's not forget that they had an incredible run the last 6 or 7 games at the end of last season, which propelled them to 10. They very easily could have been 12 or 13. So being in this range, couldn't be happier for the little lads by the lake.
All right. Keeping it rolling. Number 8, Lazio. You can go first, because I don't know what you're going to say.
Well, I don't even know what I'm going to say. I don't know if this team has a schedule. I don't know what to make of Lazio, because we go back and we talk about it all the time that when Castellanos is not playing, when Ravella is not playing, this team we have no idea what they're going to bring. So having so much emphasis on 2 players there and not in playing so inconsistently with them off the pitch, I have no idea where this Lazio team should be. They were piss poor last year, following on the shoulders of Zaccagni and 90-year-old Pedro to get them through. This year, Castellanos, for sure, their best striker, and for sure a source of goals that can be consistent, but not consistently on the pitch. And Ravella running the midfield when he's not on there. Guendouzi's not going to be the same player and cannot hold down the midfield the same way that Ravella can. So I don't have too much to say about Lazio, because I do not know where they're going to be.
Yeah, I have them behind schedule, and part of this is because of like what's happened this year, right? Like, they've been plagued by injury, been plagued by like some suspension, but all of that is as a result of kind of like not having a transfer window. And when you don't have a transfer window, like, this is what can happen. Like, and you really are feeling the effects of that. And Lazio, for me, every single year should be a team that says, let's get to Europa League. And right now, they're going to have a hard time getting there, I think. They need their best players. And when their best players are unavailable, they are a far, far, far worse team. And I think Maurizio Sarri is a great coach. But at the end of the day, like, you didn't improve the squad. You didn't deepen the squad, and you're officially suffering because of those things. And there's only so much you can do with the team that you have, especially when everybody's getting injured. And we keep saying it, like, we can't even judge Lazio yet, because we haven't really seen them play their best 11 for more than 1 game at a time. And it's hard for Sarri to get what he needs to get done with the team to get them to that next level when he doesn't have those players available. And then if you're not available, you're just inherently going to be behind schedule, because you do not have your best players on the field at any given time.
We'll see. Again, their transfer woe and the fact that they couldn't buy players, they couldn't transact, is definitely, no team is going to be in a better spot after going through that. So remains to be seen with Lazio. No schedule for me. They just exist.
I think that's fair.
On to number 9. At 9, a team that we talked about already a couple of times just from results, but Udinese is now top of the table after 10 weeks on schedule for me. Udinese is on schedule for me. These guys are the kings of the mid-table. They have been for centuries, back to the days of the Renaissance, back to the days of the Vikings running through Europe. Udinese was mid-table back then. They're mid-table today. They started off last season incredibly strong as well. I think they were top 5
Yeah,
through the first
they were
6 or 7
flying,
weeks, and eventually had their drop off. Schedule gets tough. Some of their players are overperforming. They go back to their regular potential. Most notably happening again this season, a strong start. They're riding on the back of Zaniolo, who I think is on a crazy scoring streak here, and so. From me, on schedule, they're going to end up in this, I would say, 10 to 12 spot again. They have too much talent to be in a relegation battle. They're not talented enough to fight for a European spot. Kings of the mid-table.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think they're going to end 9, 10, 11. I think some of the teams around them are actually better than them, but I think they're benefiting a lot. They have a really good coach, and the way that he plays them, regardless of who their players are, because they do have some turnover year to year, and they have some great players right now. They have Soleil at the back. Kenan Davies has been great again. Like you said, Zaniolo. Arthur Ada has been great. There's a lot of good pieces of this team, and their manager just sets them up for success. Like, they win games, and then they are going to lose some games, but they're really hard to break down. And that balance of not just going for draw after draw after draw is what kind of sets them apart and puts them in that 9, 10, 11. So I would agree. They're right on schedule. They're definitely have the talent to stay where they are. They have the manager to stay where they are. That's why he hasn't moved. That's why he hasn't been fired, because they're consistent and they get this done. And this is right where they want to be at this point in the season, I think.
I would have no complaints if I'm an Udinese player, coach, management. Management would probably be upset, but that's just how they should be. But from a fan perspective, this is right where you expect to be. Rounding out the top 10, biggest surprise of the season in terms of where they are on the table, I would say. Yeah. We have Cremonese, newly promoted Cremonese, hot start to the season, coming off a huge win, big win against Milan, 2-1. They bring in Jamie Vardy. It's a Vardy party. This roster has shown that it has some talented players. Baschirotto, Bonazzoli's tied for second in scoring in the league with 4 goals so far. Baschirotto putting in a couple of pretty important goals.
Bondo, maybe better than Yusuf Fofana. I think there's a legitimate argument that Bondo is better than Fofana at this point.
Well, Fofana is dog shit. So as long as Warren Bondo's not dog shit, then I think that he's definitely in a better spot than Fofana.
This is definitely ahead of schedule. Davide Nicola, I don't know where this came from, where all of a sudden they're capable of winning games. I didn't see this at Cagliari. At Cagliari, they just suffered through games, and I think Cagliari had a great roster, so I don't know where this came from. This is probably surprise of the season, definitely ahead of schedule. He's getting the most out of players that have been in the league, and people have been like, we're good. We're all set, and he's figuring it out.
Well, the other thing that I would say about this team, as opposed to other newly promoted teams, is that it seems like they have something to build off of going into next year. It would be a shame to see these talented players get picked off in the January window, get picked off next summer, because it seems like they're building out a core group of guys that can be good for a couple of seasons. Now, we always say that there's always a newly promoted team that ends up mid-table. We had Como last year, Lecce the year before, Monza the year before that. And so if this Cremonese team is fully looking like they're going to be that team consistently middle of the table, definitely picking off points from the top of the table, hopefully not dropping points to relegation teams. So, and I think that 100% ahead of schedule here. One other name that I'd like to point out, Van de Putte, tied for first in assists with Nico Paz. He has shown that he's a great player, definitely one to watch. I know that some of you Paisans have been looking for some guys to watch at the bottom of the table. He's definitely one to keep an eye on. Not necessarily going to be on the score sheet, but certainly going to be a part of why other players are. Cremonese showing that they should be part of this top half of the table. And with that, that does round out the top 10 of our State of the Union Paisans. Paisans, we're going to call it here. 1 to 10 we've covered. We'll have another recording coming out, another episode, part 2 of the State of the Union, to make sure that we do hit on all of the important parts of the bottom of the half of this table. We want to make sure that no matter who you're a fan of, Lecce, Parma, Genoa, even Fiorentina, we got you covered here on Calcio Culture. My partner in crime here, Vos, has seemingly dropped off. He has an incredibly important tilt at the pitch in Arizona tonight. We wish him luck. But with that being said, Paisans, Thank you for sticking with us here. We will have part 2 coming out later this week. State of the Union coming back live in just a couple of days. Paisans, thank you so much for all the support. As always, you do know where to find us on all the socials, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, 5 stars, tell a friend to tune in, get on the train, or get run over. That's how it goes. So thank you, Paisans. You're listening here on all your favorite streaming sites, Spotify and Apple Pods. And as Mats would say, Forza Calcio Culture, and do not be a gagoots. Salute.